Hello everyone. So in this video we're just gonna continue our circular series, but we're gonna build something from the ground up. So instead of continuing on the texture that we finished last time, we're just gonna start building a new one. And I think I'm just gonna release a couple more videos on this subject when we're gonna do exactly this. So basically we're gonna try to build some new textures. In this video we're gonna start with the circle. We're gonna create this shape. We're gonna duplicate it a couple times and basically try to get something like this. We're gonna use radial blur to achieve this flowery kind of texture. And then we're gonna add some additional nodes and create some randomization. And finally, we're gonna land on this texture. So I think this is the final grayscale, which we can use in the engine. And we're just gonna add few nodes to colorize and maybe give us some ideas of what kind of colors might work. I really like this one. It's kind of frosty color, and that one especially. It's a nice mixture of two colors. Okay, so let's dive into Substance now. Okay, so let's start with shape. I'm gonna pick disk, scale it down just a little bit. Oops, let me zoom in. I'm gonna use a transform as well in here, and maybe I want to blend those two together, but I want to see what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna use blend and subtract, and then click once on the transform and just offset it a little bit like this. So I want to reverse the order. Something that looks a lot better, and I want to disable tiling on that texture. So here, absolute and no tiling. Okay, we get something like this. Next, let's try to use splatter circular and plug it into pattern input 1. We're gonna use image input. Oops, let me scroll down. I want to start with 3 for the pattern amount for now, and then later on we can go back and scale it. I don't want to use any randomization as of now. I just want to, try to get that kind of shape. Right, so I hope this could work. Okay. Now maybe add some little blur to it using the slow blur and soft shape, soft circle shape. Okay, so I'm just gonna pick paraloid, double click, increase the samples, and I just wanna just a little bit. As you can see, I'm just adding a bit of the blur, but my shape goes outside of the boundaries. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna use another transform here. And I want to scale it down a little bit, and I need to disable tiling again. And now I want to blend it with our shape without the blur. I'm going to use add linear. Now let's maybe try to do reverse blur. So I'm gonna use another blend. I'm gonna copy paste our slope blur. I'm gonna do the same operation with add, but on the slope grayscale I just want to add minus and that value that we had here. Okay, great. Now I'm gonna use auto levels just in case, because I want to have a balance values. It seems the same, but I don't know, I'm just adding auto levels every now and then just to make sure that I'm working with the balance levels. Okay, maybe it's a good practice as well for you. I'm gonna blur it a little bit, just a little bit, so we can avoid this basically. Okay, I just want shape to be a little bit softer. And now I'm gonna use radial blur. I'm going to reduce the samples to something like this maybe, so we could achieve this flowery look. So I'm going to even reduce samples even further to maybe something like this for now. And I'm gonna disable tiling as well. And I wanna add another slope blur and with shape, this soft circle. I'm gonna increase the samples, but I'm gonna reduce the intensity quite a lot. I'm gonna run it through auto levels again, and I'm gonna start adding the swirl grayscale. I'm gonna hold and press Alt and Shift and just scale it up to match the square. And I'm gonna reduce the amount to something like maybe 2. Let's go with 2 and see how it goes. Or maybe 1.5. And now I'm gonna blend it with some random masks. I'm gonna use shape. I'm gonna go for paraloid again, but I'm gonna increase the tiling to something like 4 and maybe scale it down a little bit. And in here maybe try multiply. Nope. Not the subtract as well. Although subtract might work, but we need to blur that quite a lot. So let's go back and add blur. And let's just blur it. Maybe try 50. Now if we play with the opacity, you can see that we kind of eroding those parts, okay? The next bit I don't like is the middle, so I'm gonna blend it again and use our shape, paraloid, and I'm just gonna get rid of the middle. I'm gonna select the shape and I'm gonna keep scaling down until I'm gonna get rid of basically something around here maybe. I'm gonna run it through auto levels. And now I want to add those swirls back in here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take this and run it through, before auto levels, I'm just gonna run it through slope blur. And I'm gonna use another paraloid, so I'm just gonna select this one, copy, paste, put it in here and run it through that node, but I'm gonna increase the size of it. I'm gonna ramp up the samples. And maybe let's try to get, let's maybe try minus value. Okay, that kind of works, and now I'm gonna use swirl and blend those two together. So now the difficult part is to match the swirls. So I'm gonna add this to our original texture, and I'm just gonna play with the swirl to match the swirls that we already got in here. Or maybe, you know, not exactly, but yeah, something like this. I want to scale it down as well for this to be a little bit in the middle. So I'm just gonna select transformation and just scale it down to maybe something like this. And I'm gonna disable tiling just in case for that transform node. The next thing would be to get rid of maybe some parts from it. Let's maybe try to start with shape. I'm gonna get something like this. I'm gonna run it through warp so we could have a bit more randomized shape. And with Berlin noise as well. Let's maybe run with the default values on the warp and see where it's gonna take us. I'm gonna use blur with random values as well. And I'm gonna use maybe slope blur to blur it a little bit towards the edges. Okay, so for this I'm gonna use a gradient Which one? Maybe that one. That one. Or that one. Yeah, gradient 3, because it seems a bit softer here. I'm gonna add rotation to it. And I'm gonna plug it in here. Okay, I'm gonna increase the samples, but I'm gonna keep the default values. I think it maybe spreads too much. I'm gonna go back to shape and just modify this and increase the warp to maybe something like 2. Okay, I'm gonna map it to a circle using shape mapper. Pattern amount maybe 3, because we only want those 3 to be there. And we get something like this. So I think it's a bit too, oh, I don't know, maybe let's give it a go. Okay, so maybe let's run it through blend and put it on subtract. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit too much, so I'm just gonna change the shape of it so we get something like this. Okay, and we are just getting rid of parts of it, some of it. Okay, and now maybe let's try a radial blur. So we could get slight blur because we don't want to miss those shapes, but we just want to blur it a little bit. And maybe let's run it through auto levels again. Okay, next thing, let's try swirl. I'm gonna match it to the square, but I would just want just a little bit because I'm still experimenting with the shapes, and to be honest, I kind of find myself very often that I'm not sure what I'm going for, but you know, I'm just exploring with the stuff I already used, and you know, hopefully I'm gonna land on something that I can use later on in the engine. So I'm just keep going into this rabbit hole. Okay, maybe let's now warp it. But for the warp, I just wanna warp it in with a similar shape. So I'm just gonna get Perlin noise and run it through swirl. Swirl grayscale. Okay, I'm just gonna match it to the square. But maybe I just want a little bit, and obviously the scale of the Perlin noise is a little bit too much. I'm trying to get something like this maybe. And let's see if that works with the warp. So as you can see, we kind of already getting this shape that I showed you in Photoshop at the start of this video. But yeah, let's just have a little bit of the swirl around here. That looks really cool. I think it's kind of like liquid a little bit, or like a liquid metal. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let's maybe work with the blur now. Just a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna add slope, I'm gonna add shape, and go for this soft circle shape again. Obviously that's too much, so I'm just gonna increase the samples but decrease the intensity, so I could get something like this. Okay, I'm gonna run it through auto levels and blend it with our original texture. So if I'm gonna put it on multiply, that might work for you as well, like a nice swirl. So you know, keep experimenting with those blending nodes. I'm gonna use maybe copy and put it somewhere in the middle. So basically I wanna have a half of this texture and half of our blur texture here. Okay, and again, I'm just going to run it through auto levels because I think we are pretty much done with that shape. And maybe now let's try to add some sort of colors to see if we could get some interesting color mixes. Okay, so I've tried so far that flamey color, so maybe let's try to recreate it so we can have an idea what my steps are when I'm going for those. Okay, So I want a little bit of orange and red as well towards the edges. Play with the smoothness of it, maybe somewhere in the middle might be a good idea. And in the end, I'm usually adding a glow as well. And for the glow, I'm trying to match with this yellowy color. And now I just want to add a little bit more softness to it. So now I'm just going to duplicate this, basically go into my gradient and try a different colors. So I want to go for this frosty look that we had at the start. Let's see if that works. But for the glow, I'm just going to select a different color, something like purple or pink maybe. Maybe red, let's go for red. And increase the amount of it. So as you can see, we're getting this nice frosty look to this texture. And for the final one, let's try maybe to get something a bit more purple. Like this, and that one I just want to go for this nice orangey yellow. And for the glow, let's maybe decrease the amount and pick a different color, like I don't know, let's experiment. Let's get maybe orangey. I think red works quite well, but I'm gonna go for this a little bit more orange color. Okay, the only problem I can see with this texture now is that we got a little bit unbalanced highlight. So for example, this is a very prominent highlight, and maybe I want to get something more like those two. So let's see if we could go back in our graph and get a bit more balanced look. So I'm going to go back to this because I think this might be causing it, although it doesn't seem like. Okay, so that's not it. What else could be causing it? Maybe our warp? Nope. Maybe our shape mapper. Yep, seems like it's our shape mapper. So let's see if maybe we could adjust some values for our shape mapper to fix that. So I'm gonna go into Pedal Noise and maybe try the disorder. It's still a no-no. So maybe I will run our shape mapper through the auto levels and see if that fixes it. Nope. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this and double click on that one because I think it's a lot more visible on this texture, and play with some values inside of the shape mapper and see if that works. Okay, so it seems like rotating it might fix this, right? So we could get basically something a bit more balanced. Like here, right? So it seems like we got, maybe this one is a little bit too much, but yeah, I don't think that'll be an issue. Okay, so play with those values and see what you could come up with. The best thing is now you can, let's select maybe this one and let's go back to the very beginning, to this shape. To the splatter circular, and now let's say we want a lot more, or maybe we just want less, like 2 or 3. So as you can see, it gives us a lot of variations for our texture. Okay, So see if you can use it to your advantage and create a lot more textures. The best thing is that, you know, you could get those very, very quickly into the engine and play with the values. So maybe you could achieve something that works a lot better within your effects. And I think that's the main reason I am using the Substance Designer. Okay, so experiment with those shapes, see what you could come up with, because I think it works very, very well. I'm just gonna go into this blend now and see if I can maybe increase it. Reducing the blur, so you can see we can add a bit more randomization to it. I'm gonna run it through levels, because I want to manipulate the values on my own, so I can get rid of shapes from here basically. The other thing to do with it would be ideally to get this shape, for example, here, and run it through splatter circular, so we can match our shape. And in splatter circular, let's go for 3. And basically now we could, you know, match it to our number in this node. Okay. So let me experiment with this one just a little bit. Yeah, so we're getting nice erosion here essentially. I'm gonna increase its size to maybe 0.3. That's too much, but now I can control the master size slider, which is here. And as you can see, I'm just erasing the ones I really want to get rid of. Okay, so that's the tool basically. I hope you enjoyed that one, and I'm gonna continue with those. Let me know if you like it, and let me know if you find it useful, because I find it useful, but I wonder if it's just me, or you know, maybe you had some success with your FX thanks to the Substance Designer. Okay? Alright, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.